The fateful message. James Hawkins stared blearily at his computer screen, the lines of code blurring before his tired eyes. It was just another late night at the office, another thankless overtime shift spent debugging software. At 35, James couldn't help but feel his life had become an endless cycle of work, sleep, and microwave dinners for one. Suddenly, his phone chimed with an urgent notification. James glanced down, expecting a request from his boss, or maybe a reminder from his dentist. Instead, he found a message that would change his life forever. James Hawkins of Earth. The message began in glowing alien script that somehow rearranged itself into English before his eyes. You have been chosen as the successor to His Majesty Emperor Xyloth of the Verethi Galactic Empire. Prepare for your ascension. James blinked once, twice, 3 times. This had to be a joke, right? A prank from his coworkers, or some misdirected cosplay invitation. He was just an average software engineer living a mundane life in Chicago. Heir to an alien empire. Impossible. The arrival of Lyra and Nixia. His phone chimed again, startling him out of his incredulous daze. Representatives of the Verethi Empire will arrive at your location shortly to escort you to your inheritance. Glory to the new emperor. No sooner had James finished reading the message when a blinding light filled his small office. He shielded his eyes, heart pounding, as 2 figures materialized before him. The first was a tall and elegant woman with shimmering silver skin and mesmerizing purple eyes. She wore a flowing gossamer gown that seemed to float around her. Her companion was equally striking, with iridescent blue skin and captivating golden eyes, clad in a sleek, fitted jumpsuit that highlighted her athletic figure. James Hawkins, the silver-skinned woman, spoke, her voice melodic and commanding. I am Lyra, chief advisor to the late Emperor Xyloth. And this, she gestured to her companion, is Nixia, your personal bodyguard. We have come to escort you to the Verethi throne world to claim your rightful place as our new ruler. James gaped at them, his mind reeling. I think there's been a mistake, he stammered. I'm not royalty or an emperor or anything. I'm just a regular guy from Earth. An extraordinary destiny revealed. Nixia smirked, her golden eyes glinting with amusement. That's precisely why you were chosen, James Hawkins. The Emperor searched long and hard for a successor with the qualities needed to lead our empire into the future. Your quick thinking, adaptability, and strong moral compass caught his attention. Lyra nodded in agreement. Emperor Xyloth observed you through our long-range monitoring systems. He was impressed by your problem-solving skills, your quiet leadership at work, even the kindness you showed to strangers on the street. In you, he saw the potential for greatness. James felt lightheaded, gripping his desk for support. This was all too much to process. Him, an alien emperor, chosen for his unremarkable life and average achievements. Yet as he looked into the earnest faces of Lyra and Nixia, he couldn't deny the sincerity in their words, or the undeniable pull of curiosity, the whisper of destiny that stirred in his heart. An extraordinary inheritance. I know it's overwhelming, Lyra said softly, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Her touch was electric, sending shivers down James' spine. But you were born for this, James. The stars have called you to an extraordinary fate. Nixia grinned, her teeth startlingly white against her blue skin. Plus, you get to hang out with us. Trust me, there are worse things than being the emperor of a galactic civilization with 2 badass alien chicks at your side. Despite himself, James found himself returning her smile. His fear and confusion slowly gave way to a budding sense of excitement, of possibility. Maybe this was the adventure he'd always secretly craved. The chance to be someone more, to make a difference on a scale he could never have imagined. He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. All right, he said, his voice growing steadier with each word. I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I'm willing to try. To learn, to lead, to embrace whatever destiny has in store for me. Lyra beamed at him, her eyes shining with pride and something more, something that made James' heart skip a beat. "Spoken like a true emperor," she said softly. "Come, Your Majesty. Your empire awaits." As James followed Lyra and Nixia out of his office and into the unknown, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life would never be the same. But then, that was the thrill of it, wasn't it? The chance to become something extraordinary, to reach out and seize the stars themselves. He was James Hawkins, software engineer turned Galactic Emperor, and he was ready to meet his destiny. A vessel fit for an emperor. James stepped through the airlock into the sleek, impossibly advanced spaceship that would carry him to his new life. His breath caught in his throat as he took in the gleaming chrome corridors, the holographic displays flickering with star charts and alien script, the hum of powerful engines vibrating through the deck plates. "Beautiful, isn't she?" Nixia said proudly, running a hand along the bulkhead. "The ISS Celestial Ascent, the fastest ship in the Verethi fleet. She'll get us to the throne world in no time." James could only nod, awestruck by the sheer technological marvel surrounding him. Growing up on Earth, he had dreamed of spaceships like this, of journeying to the stars. Now it was his reality. Lessons in galactic politics. As the celestial ascent slipped free of Earth's gravity and leaped into the swirling vortex of hyperspace, James found himself in an impromptu crash course on the Verethi Empire. Seated in the ship's luxurious observation lounge, he listened raptly as Lyra and Nixia painted a picture of the civilization he was to rule. The Verethi Empire spans hundreds of worlds and dozens of star systems, Lyra explained, manipulating a holographic star map with graceful gestures. It's a diverse realm, home to countless sentient species and cultures, all united under the banner of the Emperor. James marveled at the images of alien cities and landscapes that flashed before him, each more fantastical than the last. But with that wonder came a creeping sense of responsibility, of the weight that would soon rest on his shoulders. As Emperor, it will be your duty to maintain order and harmony within the Empire, Lyra continued, to balance the needs and desires of all your subjects, to uphold justice and the rule of law. A test of worth. Nixia took over, her tone more serious. But not everyone will accept a human emperor, especially one from a primitive world like Earth. You'll have to prove yourself worthy of the throne, both to the imperial court and to the people. She fixed James with a piercing gaze, her golden eyes seeming to bore into his soul. "I hope you're ready for that challenge, James, because the fate of billions will rest on your decisions." James swallowed hard, feeling the enormity of the task before him. But beneath the trepidation, a spark of determination ignited in his chest. He thought of all the times he had been underestimated in his life, all the doubters and naysayers who had dismissed his dreams. This was his chance to show what he was truly made of, to rise to an occasion greater than any he had ever known. "I'm ready," he said firmly, meeting Nixia's gaze. "I may be from a primitive world, but never underestimate the strength and ingenuity of the human spirit. I will be the emperor this galaxy needs, no matter what." Unseen perils. Nixia's stern expression softened into a smile. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear," she said, clapping him on the shoulder. "And you won't be alone. Lyra and I will be with you every step of the way, to guide and protect you." Just then, the ship shuddered violently, throwing them from their seats. Alarms blared and red emergency lights pulsed through the observation lounge. James struggled to his feet, his heart racing. "What's happening?" he shouted over the cacophony. Nixia was already sprinting for the door, her hand flying to the energy pistol at her hip. "We're under attack," she yelled back. "Pirates, most likely. Strap in and hold on." James barely had time to scramble into his seat before another impact rocked the ship. Through the observation viewport, he caught a glimpse of sleek, predatory ships swirling around the celestial ascent, disruptor cannons blazing. The mettle of an emperor. Lyra's hands flew over the control console, her face set in grim determination. The ship jinked and wove, trying to evade the pirates' fire. But they were outnumbered and outgunned, their shields weakening with each hit. James gripped the armrests of his seat, his mind racing. He thought of all the space battles he'd seen in movies and video games, all the strategies and tactics he'd absorbed over the years. Suddenly, an idea crystallized in his mind. "Lyra," he called out. "The nebula, off our starboard bow. If we can lure the pirates inside and detonate one of our photon torpedoes, the chain reaction should take them out." Lyra glanced at him, surprised. That could work," she said, a note of admiration in her voice. "I'm impressed, James." The ship veered sharply, diving into the swirling clouds of the nebula. The pirate ships followed, hot on their tail. James held his breath, watching the torpedo launcher indicator. When it flashed green, he slammed his fist on the firing control. A blinding flash erupted behind them, a shockwave buffeting the ship. But when the glare faded, the pirate ships were gone, reduced to expanding clouds of debris. A glimpse of greatness. Silence reigned in the observation lounge, broken only by the soft beeping of damage control consoles. Slowly, Nixia and Lyra turned to James, their expressions a mix of awe and respect. "You saved us," Nixia said softly. "Your quick thinking, your tactical mind. I've never seen anything like it." Lyra nodded, her purple eyes shining. "The Emperor chose well," she murmured. "You truly have the makings of greatness within you, James Hawkins." James felt a flush of pride and something more, a stirring of connection to these extraordinary women who had become his guides and guardians. In that moment, hurtling through the stars towards an uncertain future, he had never felt more alive, more purposeful. The adventure was only beginning, and James was ready to embrace it with open arms and an open heart, for he knew now that the human spirit could triumph over any challenge, that the courage and ingenuity of Earth's sons and daughters could light the way across the galaxy. He was James Hawkins, the once and future Emperor, and his story was just beginning. The jewel of the Empire. As the celestial ascent descended through the atmosphere of Galactic, the Verithi throne world, James couldn't help but gasp in wonder. The planet was a gleaming jewel of a world, its surface covered in sprawling cities of towering crystalline spires and sweeping arches. Anti-gravity vehicles zipped through the air between the buildings, glittering like shoals of fish in the sun. "Behold the heart of your empire, your majesty," Lyra said softly, standing beside him at the observation viewport. "The greatest civilization in the known universe, a beacon of enlightenment and progress for all the galaxy." James could only nod, humbled and awed by the sight before him. This was to be his domain, his responsibility. It was a humbling thought. A palace of wonders. The ship set down on a landing pad at the Imperial Palace, a vast complex of soaring towers and sprawling gardens that seemed to cover half the continent. As James disembarked with Lyra and Nixia, he was greeted by a delegation of high-ranking officials and nobles, all bowing deeply before him. "All hail Emperor James, long may he reign," they intoned in unison. James swallowed hard, trying to project an air of confidence and authority as he followed Lyra and Nixia into the palace. But inside, he felt like a child playing dress-up, a fraud waiting to be discovered. The interior of the palace was even more breathtaking than the exterior, a dizzying labyrinth of grand halls and sweeping staircases, of lush atriums and soaring domes. Everywhere James looked, there were wonders to behold. Exotic alien art, shimmering force fields, android servitors gliding silently on their duties. The weight of the crown. But for all its beauty, James could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on him, the expectations of generations of emperors before him. How could he, a mere human from a backwater world, hope to live up to such a legacy? His unease must have shown on his face, for Nixia leaned in close as they walked, her voice low and reassuring. "Remember, you were chosen for a reason," she murmured. "Trust in yourself, in the qualities that brought you here, and trust in us to guide and support you." James took a deep breath, drawing strength from her words. He thought of all the challenges he had faced in his life, all the obstacles he had overcome. He could do this. He would do this. Whispers of dissent. As they entered the great throne room, a hush fell over the assembled courtiers and dignitaries. James strode down the long carpet, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. He could feel hundreds of eyes upon him, judging, appraising. He reached the throne, a massive seat of glittering black stone and shimmering energy fields. Slowly, ceremonially, he turned and lowered himself onto it, feeling the weight of the galaxy settle on his shoulders. "Behold, Emperor James of the Verathi," Lyra declared, her voice ringing out across the throne room. "Long may he reign." The crowd erupted into applause and cheers, but James could hear the undercurrent of whispers beneath the adulation. Whispers of doubt, of skepticism, of outright hostility. A human emperor? Preposterous. He won't last a cycle. Mark my words. The court will eat him alive. A voice of challenge. One voice rose above the rest, cold and imperious. "I challenge the legitimacy of this ascension." The crowd parted, revealing a tall, hawkish figure in ornate robes. He strode forward, his eyes hard and glittering. "I am Lord Vakarian, head of the noble house of Karn and member of the Imperial Council," he declared. "And I say that a primitive human has no right to sit upon the Verathi throne." James felt a flash of anger, hot and bright, in his chest. He stood, drawing himself up to his full height. "I am Emperor James Hawkins, chosen by your own Emperor Xyloth as his successor," he said, his voice ringing with a confidence he hadn't known he possessed. "I may be human, but I have the heart and mind of a leader, and I will prove my worth to you and to all the Empire." The gauntlet throne. Lord Vakarian sneered, his lip curling. Bold words for a barbarian from a backwater planet. But words are wind, and the challenges before you are hurricane force. You will fail, human, and I will be there to pick up the pieces of your shattered reign. With that, he turned on his heel and stalked from the throne room, his cloak billowing behind him. A stunned silence followed in his wake. James sat back on the throne, his heart pounding. He had just made a powerful enemy, he knew. But he had also declared himself, staked his claim to the throne and to his own destiny. He glanced at Lyra and Nixia, standing at his side. Lyra's face was set in a mask of calm determination, while Nixia's hand rested on the hilt of her energy blade, ready to defend her emperor. James drew strength from their presence, from their unwavering belief in him. He would face the challenges ahead as he had faced the pirates in space, with courage, with cleverness, and with the indomitable human spirit that had carried his species to the stars. For he was James Hawkins, Emperor of the Verathi, and his reign was only beginning. Shadows of intrigue. In the days following his coronation, James threw himself into the task of ruling. With Lyra and Nixia at his side, he met with advisors, reviewed policies, and tried to grasp the complex web of alliances and rivalries that made up Verathi politics. But always, the shadow of Lord Vakarian's challenge hung over him. James could feel the nobleman's influence in every sidelong glance, every whispered conversation that ceased when he entered a room. It was clear that Vakarian was working to undermine his authority, to paint him as a weak and unworthy emperor. "He's dangerous," Nixia warned, her eyes hard. "Vakarian has powerful allies and a hunger for power that knows no bounds. We must be vigilant." James nodded, his jaw set. He knew he was in for the fight of his life, a battle not just for his throne, but for the future of the Empire. The Game of Thrones. Lyra, with her keen political instincts, became James' most valuable advisor. She taught him how to navigate the treacherous currents of court intrigue, how to spot allies and enemies, how to play the Game of Thrones. "Politics is a dance," she told him, as they walked in the palace gardens. "A dance of power and influence, of give and take. You must learn the steps, or you will be swept off the floor." James took her lessons to heart, watching and learning, honing his skills. He made alliances where he could, with ambitious young nobles and wise elder statesmen. He listened to the concerns of his subjects, from the mightiest lord to the lowliest servant. And slowly he began to build a base of support, a foundation for his rule. Whispers in the dark. But Vakarian was not idle. Nixia's network of spies brought word of secret meetings, of whispered plots and shadowy alliances. The nobleman was gathering his forces, preparing for a move against the throne. "We must act," James said, his eyes hard. "We cannot let Vakarian gain the upper hand." Lyra nodded, her face grim. "I have an idea," she said, "a way to turn Vakarian's own schemes against him. But it will be risky, and it will require all of your cunning and courage." James took a deep breath, steeling himself. "I'm ready," he said, "whatever it takes to protect my people and my empire." A dangerous gambit. The plan was set in motion. Lyra used her telepathic abilities to plant rumors and misinformation, to sow discord among Vakarian's allies. Nixia's agents staged attacks and incidents, creating an atmosphere of chaos and unrest. And James played his part, acting the weak and indecisive ruler, seeming to fumble and falter at every turn. It was a difficult role to play, going against every instinct he had, but he trusted in Lyra and Nixia, in their wisdom and their loyalty. The trap was sprung at a grand ball, held in honor of a visiting dignitary. James entered the ballroom in disguise, mingling with the guests, listening to their whispers and rumors. Suddenly, Vakarian appeared, flanked by his supporters. The nobleman strode to the center of the room, his voice ringing out. "My fellow Verethi, the time has come to act. Our empire is in the hands of a weak and unworthy ruler, a primitive human who knows nothing of our ways. I call upon all true patriots to join me, to overthrow this pretender and restore the glory of the Verethi." The mask unveiled. There was a moment of shocked silence. Then, to Vakarian's surprise, laughter began to ripple through the crowd. James stepped forward, shedding his disguise. "Lord Vakarian," he said, his voice calm and strong, "I thank you for your concern for our empire, but I'm afraid you're mistaken." He gestured to the crowd, to the faces of the nobles and dignitaries. "These are not the faces of discontent, of a people yearning for a new ruler. These are the faces of my subjects, my allies, my friends. They know me, and they trust in me." Vakarian's face twisted in rage. You tricked me," he sputtered. "This is all a ruse. Loyalties revealed." James smiled coldly. "No, Lord Vakarian, this is a revelation of your true nature, of your ambition and your deceit. You thought to manipulate me, to use me as a pawn in your game. But you underestimated me, and you underestimated the strength and wisdom of the Verethi." He turned to the crowd, his voice ringing with passion. "I may be human, but I have the heart of a Verethi. I have learned your ways and I have earned your trust. And together, we will build a future brighter than any our empire has ever known." The crowd erupted in cheers, a deafening roar of support and approval. In that moment, James knew he had won, not just the battle but the war. In the chaos, Vakarian tried to slip away. But Nixia was there, her energy blade at his throat. "Not so fast, traitor," she growled. "You'll face imperial justice for your crimes." As the guards led Vakarian away, James felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Lyra, her eyes shining with pride, and something more. "You did it," she whispered. "You proved yourself a true emperor, a leader worthy of the Verethi." A future unfolding. James felt a rush of emotion, of gratitude and affection, and something deeper, more profound. In that moment, he realized that his feelings for Lyra and Nixia had grown beyond mere friendship or political alliance. They were his partners, his confidants, his soulmates. The road ahead would not be easy, he knew. There would be other challenges, other enemies to face. But with Lyra and Nixia at his side, with the strength of the Verethi behind him, He felt ready for anything. He was James Hawkins, Emperor of the Verethi, and his reign was just beginning. A storm on the horizon. In the aftermath of the failed coup, James worked tirelessly to consolidate his rule and heal the divisions within the empire. He reached out to his opponents, offering forgiveness and reconciliation, and he implemented reforms to address the grievances that had fueled the unrest. Under his leadership, the Verethi Empire entered a new era of peace and prosperity. Trade flourished, arts and sciences blossomed, and the people began to see their human emperor not as a foreign usurper, but as a wise and just ruler. But even as the empire thrived, a new threat was gathering on its borders. The Zorak Dominion, a ruthless and expansionist power, had long coveted the wealth and resources of the Verethi. Now, seeing the empire under new and untested leadership, they saw their chance to strike. The call to arms. The first attacks came without warning, swift and brutal. Zorak worship swept across the frontier, overwhelming border defenses and laying waste to outlying colonies. The Verethi fleet, long complacent in peacetime, was slow to respond. James received the news in his private chambers, his face grim as he listened to the reports of devastation and loss. Lyra and Nixia were at his side, their expressions mirroring his own shock and anger. "This is an act of war," James said, his voice hard. "The Zorak have violated our sovereignty and spilled the blood of our people. We must respond with all the might of the Verethi." Nixia nodded, her hand clenching on the hilt of her energy blade. "My warriors stand ready, Your Majesty. We will drive the Zorak back to their own space and make them pay for their aggression." Plans and preparations. But James held up a hand, his mind racing. "No," he said. "If we meet the Zorak head-on, the casualties will be enormous. We need a different strategy." Over the next days and weeks, James and his advisors worked feverishly to devise a plan. They analyzed Zorak tactics and technology, looking for weaknesses to exploit. They rallied the Verethi worlds, calling for unity and sacrifice in the face of the enemy. And at the center of it all was James, working tirelessly, pushing himself to the brink of exhaustion. He knew that the fate of the empire rested on his shoulders, that the lives of billions depended on his decisions. A desperate gamble. The plan, when it came, was audacious to the point of insanity. James proposed to lead a small, elite force deep into Zorak space, to strike at the heart of their empire. The goal was to capture or destroy the Zorak's central command nexus, the source of their fleet coordination and communication. "If we can disrupt their command and control, their fleet will be thrown into chaos," James explained to his incredulous advisors. "It will give our main forces a chance to counterattack and drive them back." It was a desperate gamble, and everyone knew it. But James was adamant. "I will not send my people to die in a war of attrition," he said. "This is our best chance, perhaps our only chance." The night before, on the eve of the mission, James stood on the balcony of his chambers, looking out over the glittering lights of the capital. The weight of the empire seemed to press down on him, a physical burden on his shoulders. Soft footsteps approached, and he turned to see Lyra and Nixia. They were dressed for battle, in form-fitting combat suits and bristling with weapons. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, a wealth of unspoken emotions passing between them. Then, as if by unspoken agreement, they came together, arms encircling each other, foreheads touching. "James," Lyra whispered, her voice thick with feeling. "No matter what happens tomorrow, know that we are with you, always, in this life and the next." Nixia nodded, her golden eyes fierce. "We are your sword and shield, Your Majesty. We will fight for you, die for you if need be." The final battle. The battle, when it came, was chaos incarnate. James and his team fought their way through the Zorak command nexus, a labyrinth of corridors and chambers swarming with enemies. They took losses, each one a brutal blow, but they pushed on, driven by desperation and sheer force of will. At the heart of the Nexus, they found the Zorak Command Center, a vast chamber pulsing with malevolent energy. And there, waiting for them, was the Zorak Overlord, a monstrous being of cybernetic implants and pulsing, sickly flesh. The battle was joined, a whirlwind of blades and blaster fire, of screams and sizzling flesh. James fought like a man possessed, his energy blade a blur of light, Lyra and Nyxia at his side. In the end, it was Nyxia who struck the final blow, her blade piercing the Overlord's heart. But the victory came at a terrible cost. As the Overlord fell, it triggered a self-destruct sequence, a final spite against its enemies, sacrifice and triumph. James ordered a retreat, but Nyxia was cut off, surrounded by Zorak warriors. "Go," she shouted over the din of battle. "I'll hold them off." James hesitated, torn. But Lyra grabbed his arm, her face anguished. "We have to go," she said. "We have to complete the mission." With a final, agonized look, James allowed Lyra to pull him away. They'd barely made it to their ship before the Nexus exploded, a cataclysmic eruption of energy that lit the sky like a second sun. In the aftermath, the Zorak fleet was in disarray, their coordination shattered. The Verathi forces, led by James, pressed their advantage, driving the enemy back, liberating the conquered worlds one by one. The war was won, but at a terrible price. The Verathi had lost countless lives, and the Empire was forever changed. And James had lost Nyxia, his friend, his protector, his love. A bittersweet victory. In the grand plaza of the capital, James addressed his people, his voice heavy with grief and triumph. "Today, we have achieved a great victory," he said. "We have shown the galaxy the strength and resilience of the Verathi, the indomitable spirit that burns within us. But we have also suffered great loss. We have lost friends, family, loved ones. We have lost brave warriors like Nyxia, who gave her life so that we might live. Let us honor their sacrifice. Let us rebuild, not just our cities and ships, but our hearts and our hopes. Let us create a future worthy of their memory, a future of peace and prosperity for all the peoples of the galaxy." As the crowd cheered, James turned to Lyra, who stood at his side, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "She would be proud of you," Lyra whispered. "Proud of the emperor you've become, the man you are." James nodded, too choked with emotion to speak. He took Lyra's hand, drawing strength from her touch, from the love and loyalty that bound them together. They had won the war, but the struggle was not over. There would be new challenges to face, new enemies to fight. But James knew that with Lyra at his side, with the strength of the Verathi behind him, he could face anything. He was James Hawkins, Emperor of the Verathi, and his reign had only just begun.